This is the magicwordpodcast.com.
Hello, this is Scott Wells for the magicwordpodcast.com. Well, of course, you know those opening strains were not our usual opening music, but I thought that you would enjoy hearing the mellifluous strains from a Gibson organ as the keys were tickled by John Sturk, who is going to be our guest today, and he is an accomplished jazz pianist, and I am so thankful that he gave us a little bit of an improvisational jazz to open up this week's podcast. Well, we want to thank you for entering the contest, and that was offered by Jonathan Levitt for the Stranger app. There was a new app released, or I should say a new operating system of Android that was released just recently, and so he was offering one of those Android apps as well as an app for the iPhone. So there are two apps valued at $150 or $149.99 that we're going to announce those winners at the end of the podcast. So stick around to the end to find out if your name was one that was randomly selected. We had a pretty good turnout, as you could imagine, for this particular contest, and I want to thank all of you guys for entering the contest, but of course that there can only be one winner for each of the operating system apps. So anyhow, that'll be announced on the other side. Before we get into today's podcast, we had a friend from in Dallas, Texas recently who had given us a few jokes, and I know that you know him and like him because we've been receiving some pretty good feedback just for the joke hotline. So Norman Beck is an entertaining magician, and he had a long-running column in the MUM magazine as well, and I thought perhaps you might like to hear a couple more jokes from him today. So I think we'll just dial in and see what he has to say for today.
Joke hotline, how can we help?
So have you got anything funny for me today?
Well, have you looked in the mirror lately?
Yes, and my beard is getting longer.
I've got to tell you, Scott, if I was as dumb as people think I am, I'd be twice as stupid. Actually, the way that should be worded, he's so dumb, if he was twice as smart, he'd still be stupid. That's actually the way it should have been worded, but I stumbled and needed to buy a vowel. So, you know, people, I often ask me, they say, can you tell a joke? And I say, I have a joke on any subject, which is sort of a lie. It's not totally true, but it's not totally false either. Give me any subject and I'll demonstrate an example of just being able to tell a joke on any subject. So whatever you want.
All right. We're in this situation then right now being sheltered in place, and so we're thankful for doctors and nurses and those people who are attending to those who are helping us, as well as teachers who this is National Teachers Week as we speak here. So let's do one first of all about maybe a doctor or a nurse joke, and then do a teacher joke.
What would you call a person in the medical profession that has an IQ of 40? That would be the administrator.
Okay.
Or you could say, but that's an example of a plug-and-play joke, because you can take any subject that they name and pick somebody high up in the organization and give a low IQ number. Say, in other words, if I wanted to about a doctor, I could say, what do you call a person with an IQ of 40? And they say they don't know, and you say, well, that'd be doctor. I mean, but you can move it up the line, but that's it. Gives the appearance that you could tell a joke, because you can plug. I call it a plug and play because I can use any subject. So
let's say, for example, a teacher.
So for a teacher, one that I like very much is one Monday morning, the mother comes in and tells her son, "Come on, get up, you got to go to school." He said, "Mom, I don't want to go to school." She said, "You got to get up, you got to go to school." He said, "Why do I have to get up and go to school?" She said, "Because you're 52 years old and you're the principal."
Okay.
the thing about it is, this is, and if you wanted to change it to you're 52 and you're the teacher, you can. But I think saying you're the principal, I think it's a funnier joke, but it's a very simple. It's one. The good jokes to me are the ones where you don't see the punchline coming. Like one of my favorites, because of this coronavirus, there's actually been here in Dallas. There's been a shortage of blood, and the Red Cross has been requesting blood donations. Mm-hmm. And I went to make one yesterday, and I've got to tell you, I'm not doing that anymore because they want to know where the blood came from, whose was it, what was it doing in the bucket, what was the knife doing at the bottom of the bucket. They just ask way too many questions.
Yes, they would.
Yeah. So go ahead, hit me again. Any subject.
All right. What about hunting?
Hunting? Mm-hmm. Hunting. Well, there were two rednecks in South Texas that went deer hunting. And the one went one way and one went the other. And a terrible accident occurred, and one of the rednecks shot his buddy. And he rushed him to the hospital, and the doctor took him in the emergency room and then into surgery, and they operated on him for, 10 hours or so. And finally the surgeon came out to see his buddy, and he shakes his head. And he said, "Billy Bob, I'm sorry, but Bubba didn't make it." He said, "Oh, that's terrible." He said he would have had a much better chance if you hadn't have field dressed him first.
Norm, thanks very much.
Well,
I appreciate the
All right.
education on humor and some of the jokes. Have a good one. Well, thank you again. I appreciate, Norm, you being available there for your comedy hotline and letting us check in from time to time and hear a few jokes. And I appreciate your thoughts as well and keeping a smile on our face. Well, let's get into this week's guest. This week's episode features John Sturk, who is from Chicago, and as I mentioned early at the beginning of the podcast, that he is an accomplished jazz pianist, and he talks a little bit, in fact, about that and his jazz trio, and he performs at some improv shops in and around Chicago, and also we talk about Abbott's Get Together, where he had taken over for the live music that is provided during the evening stage shows, but he's also an accomplished street magician, and we talk a little bit about him performing in the streets there in Colon, where they have a busker contest each year, and he is one of the people who helps put that on, and he also performs around town doing magic there in Chicago, and he's also on the fast track to become the national president for the Society of American Magicians. So that's going to be coming up sometime soon, and he is serving on the council, and he gives some good advice also about perhaps some things for your club to do in order to become a lot stronger. So I'm going to turn it over then now to my friend from Chicago. Please welcome John Sturk here on The Magic Word. Now I want to welcome a friend all the way from Chicago, who is someone who is actually the second vice president coming up the line on the Society of American Magicians on the international scale. And as I said, resides in Chicago and is a musician and a magician, which I think is interesting because a lot of times when people ask what our profession is, what do you do? And you say a magician, they say, oh, what instrument do you play? And I always say the cards, and that kind of takes them by surprise because they're used to hearing musician, not a magician. Please welcome John Sturk. Hey there, John.
Hi, Scotty. Thanks for having me.
Thanks a lot for being on here today. You know that I think that you're one of these people who is a backbone of our magic society, and frequently I will see pictures, I should say covers of the Linking Ring and of the MUM magazines who I didn't know. And then once I read the articles, it's like, oh, that's a pretty important guy. You know, he's done a lot for the organization, for magic in general. And you're one of those people who know you, love you, and know you, but there are others around the world, who may not know much about John. And I think after they listen to this podcast that they will have made a new friend. And that's kind of what I was wanting to do, is kind of to introduce you a little bit more, particularly since you're going to be involved with on an international scale with the Society of American Magicians. As I said, you also played music then as well. So, and I've seen your show several times, where there's been street performing, and we're going to talk about that. And also, you worked with another gentleman that you had. I think you were doing a piano, you were doing the keyboards, and he was doing some magic, and you both did something. Remember that there at Magic Inc.?
Yes, we did. Magic Inc. was the first time when I tried something like that with Tomas Medina. We did Short Guys with Glasses.
Yeah.
So we did sort of we had a comic open for us, and then we kind of switched places back and forth. And that was the first time I experimented with doing music with a magician. And then last year I did another two-man show with Mago Gosner from Mexico, who now lives in Chicago. And he and I did something similar where we would trade off, and when he was on stage, I would play the keyboards for him. And we ran that show for about 2 months. And
was he doing music also?
No.
Oh, okay.
He sang a little bit, but not for me.
Okay, so in other words, that you would play for him when he was on, but then whenever you were performing, he was just getting his stuff ready for the next part.
Right. I still haven't quite figured out how to do play the piano and do magic at the same time, but I have been workshopping that very thing with some friends. Mm-hmm. So I think I'm getting closer to cracking the code on this.
Really? Like when you're playing something is it verbal magic, like mentalism type of thing, or actual physical?
Like doing a chop cup routine while playing the piano.
Okay. So you can play with one hand and have the chop cup with the other, kind of a
kind of
thing. Okay.
Close.
Okay.
It's you can see the trouble I'm having describing it verbally.
Exactly. And I think it's going to have to be something obviously to be seen. I think what magic is a visual art, whereas that music is something that's audible, but you need to combine the two. So that's interesting. I like that. In talking about two people performing, I know there have been several in the past there in Chicago who have had a two-man act. P.J. Murphy and David Parr had an act, and some other guys also who have had a twosome. And I love watching them because it's interesting to see how that one magician interacts with another one, because typically magic is in one, with 99.9% of us obviously performing on our own. But when you're working with someone else, then you have to learn to share the stage, and also how you will kind of complement each other so that one doesn't necessarily outshine the other, and so that one thing segues into the next. Is that kind of what your thoughts are?
Yeah. It is a unique, or I shouldn't say unique, but it is a much more rare thing to see two magicians working together. Mm-hmm. And also it kind of goes related to, but not quite the same as, the magician and assistant. But I think there has been a lot of growth in that area as well. I mean, even not too long ago with Amazing Jonathan and Psychic Tanya, mm-hmm. but also a couple years ago was the first time I was exposed to see Les Arnold and Dazzle.
Right.
Which, oh my gosh, I love that act so much. I loved it because it really played on the sort of stuffiness, or the over-classical magician and the tux and tails, and then the wild assistant. And it was just a hoot to watch. I absolutely loved it.
Well, that's an interesting point there, too, that I was going down the road of actually two magicians complementing each other, whereas that you're referring to like Johnny Thompson and Thompsonian Company kind of a thing.
Yeah.
In which that the assistant is someone who shares the spotlight, but also the applause, because they both complement each other and completely different. One is not necessarily trying to do magic, but they're just trying to get their time on the stage, basically, which makes it funny.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And yeah, Thompsoni and Co. is another great example of that. And I think it's smaller degrees of dynamic between magician and magician, magician and assistant, but really it boils down to two people putting on the show instead of just one.
Well, Siegfried and Roy are obviously the first ones that come to mind as far as when I think of a duo.
And of course P&T, yeah.
Penn and Teller, exactly. When they're both on stage at the same time and they're helping each other and, again, complimenting, as opposed to one person doing a trick and then you walk off as the other one comes on and going back and forth, like that, so, which is what you were saying that you were doing with Tomas, I guess.
Yeah, that was our first attempt on it. We weren't quite sure, hadn't quite figured out what to do together, although we did a few things together, especially at the end of the show where we just he and I just would rant about things that annoyed us about magicians, and I would underscore it musically. So it was like, stop saying not that hand, the clean hand, it's not funny anymore, blah, stuff like that.
Yeah, right. Well, again, I think that has to be scripted tightly, and also so that one is not going to be jealous, I guess, of someone, getting the spotlight more time than the other one or whatever.
It's not so much that. And let me throw another example for you, which is Dave Cox and Bill Cott, who are the Charlatans, and they performed a two-man show at the Castle. They've also mounted that two-man show here in Chicago, where I got to play the piano for them. That was another great example of two magicians who had serious improv comedy chops, but also had a very tightly scripted show. So there can be a combination of the two. So within their show, they had moments of improvisation, and that's what I know. For me, I watched a whole weekend of this run, and each one, it kept it fresh each time because you never quite knew what was going to happen at this moment or this moment.
It sounds like they didn't probably either know what the other was necessarily going to do. That keeps it fresh.
Exactly.
I didn't.
Exactly right.
I don't know Bill Cott. I do know Dave Cox quite well, and I did see him at the Castle working there at the Peller Theater with Bruce Gold one time, and they complimented each other beautifully.
Yeah.
And I think that's another thing. At the Peller Theater, there will frequently, now that I think about that, they do have two people who work well with each other. It seems like I saw Paul Draper and Christian Cagigal work together doing two medalists, doing something kind of back and forth, like that.
I'll admit, I have not spent a lot of time at the Castle. I've had a couple of visits. There was one visit where I was working a day job at the time, and we had our conference around the corner from the Castle at the Lowe's Hotel. So I spent a whole week in Los Angeles, and work was over about 6 p.m. So every night I went down to the Castle that week. It was great. Yeah, I had such a great time.
Even though the same people were working every night, you still enjoy it.
Even I don't. That wasn't so. I can appreciate watching a magic performance more than once. Maybe because I know too much, but I had a great time and just getting to visit with people, and I didn't watch the same shows every night. I mean, some of them were busier, others but I did see multiple shows multiple times, and I had a great time doing it. And I did see the people that were working in the Peller, and there were some people who were. It was just, my turn, then your turn, my turn, then your turn. And it was always more interesting to have people who interacted with each other, just to see, because you never knew what kind of combination that was going to get.
Now, we're recording this over here on March the 21st, and so is Dave and Bill working anywhere then right now? Dave Cox and Bill Cott? They're in Chicago?
They're not in Chicago. They're both in Los Angeles right now, and I know they still mount the Charlatans from time to time in the Peller, but keep your eye open for when they do it next, because not only do they have the two of them with their amazing comedy and magic chops, but they also bring a live piano player with them. So Dave and Bill, if you're listening, let me know the next time you want to do it. I'll be there.
Okay. Are there now? There are a lot of things going on, I know, around Chicago. Are there any other magic shows that you would recommend? As I mentioned, what today's date is, but of course things have been, due to the coronavirus, everything's shut down. But
yeah.
What was going on?
For a week now, we've shut down all the bars and theaters in Chicago, and starting today, as we record, we have a stay-at-home order. So. There's nothing going on that you can go see.
Right.
But there is, and guys, forgive me if I leave anybody out, but there's the Magic Penthouse. which is a monthly show downtown in River North. There is.
Is it actually in a penthouse? I mean, is it in top of a building?
It's where it started. It's currently in a hotel ballroom.
Okay.
But it's on a high floor, so it feels like a penthouse. There's also the Trickery, which is a small theater in Lakeview, which is near where I live. There is the Dennis Watkins Show, which is the Magic Parlor.
That's kind of like the Steve Cohen type of a thing, isn't it? I mean,
yeah,
it's just a one
similar.
person. Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, kind of.
One-man show.
I mean, it is a one-man show, yeah, and it's formal and it's a hotel, and so in those ways, I guess, yes. But that's been going on for a long time. And
he was doing Houdini also. How to play? Yeah,
he was touring, did some touring with this Houdini bio play where he actually performed the water torture cell.
Right.
And I don't do that. So.
No, I've taken that out of my close-up repertoire too.
I really don't want to have to work out and get into good enough shape to look good in the swimsuit. So it's really not my bag.
Not even upside down, huh? They still recognize you.
Yeah, they'll know it's me.
So, what about Chris Carter? Is Chris working anywhere around town right now that you know?
Not necessarily in like a public show capacity.
That's what I mean.
I know he still does his colleges and he's been doing speaking gigs, but I don't know of any like theater shows that he's doing right now.
Yeah, I've seen him perform a couple of times in one-man shows there in Chicago. So those are the ones that are kind of going on. Then, of course, the Chicago Magic Lounge, which has been around for a period of time, and they're at their new location. When did that actually start? When the Chicago Magic Lounge?
Our first meeting we had was in December of 2014. And then we had our first preview show March of 2015, and then we did our first actual open show a few weeks after that, so at end of March 2015.
And as I recall, back then you were sharing the stage. I should say that all the magicians were sharing a stage with a burlesque theater. It was kind of like there was successful burlesque theater, and you kind of said, okay, well, let's do one night of magic as well.
Yeah, it was a burlesque company who had been performing in Chicago a long time and finally had, through a combination of investors and through GoFundMe or one of those fundraising sites.
Yeah.
They had raised enough money to open their own theater in Uptown in Chicago, and so they were going to do for sure the primetime nights, Friday and Saturday, and they needed programming to fill out the rest of the week. So we had gotten in touch with them to start and pitched a magic show to them. And they were like, sure, let's do it. So we did Thursday nights for the first 8 or 9 months. And then in January 2016, we started doing 2 nights a week, which is Thursday and Saturday nights.
And complemented that also, as I recall, with a close-up magic show following the stage show. There would be an extra fee thing, right?
Yeah, when we started the Saturday night shows, we wanted to have something extra. So we would do the show on a Saturday night, which would include the close-up hour, then an hour of stage show, and then a break for bar magic as well. And then after the stage show, we would go into the back room, which was maybe about, I think maybe 40 or 50 seats. It was about half the size, and a much more intimate space. So back there we did a formal close-up show.
Yeah, and I remember attending that one time, and I knew that the burlesque show was going on at that venue. That was the prime thing that they had there. But what I thought was interesting is whenever that I was back in the close-up show, after watching the stage show, that I was hearing some loud music, and I thought, boy, this is awfully loud there next door. And they said, no, the burlesque show is going on now. So apparently,
that took a while to sort of figure out the timing, because we basically had to make sure that the close-up show ended by the time the burlesque show started, because there was no soundproofing in that wall.
No.
So it was loud when they started the music for the dancers. So we were kind of all like synchronizing our watches to make sure that the close-up ended before the burlesque started. Otherwise, it would just be distracting.
But it was so successful, and obviously that being sold out week after week, I guess, which encouraged the investors to say, let's start looking for a place of our own down the street, which eventually happened.
Yep, that sure did. They broke ground, let's see, if memory serves, that would be in the summer of 2016? No, 17. And then opened for business in February of 2018.
That's fairly quick, as I recall, because I remember seeing some videos of the place, because as I recall, wasn't it a dry cleaners or something?
Yeah, it was a former industrial laundry building.
That was it.
So that had been they had moved out to a larger premises, and so the building was really just sitting vacant there in that lot. So when the Magic Lounge decided to make it, they stripped the whole building down to really 4 walls and a dirt floor. They even ripped the roof off.
Wow.
And rebuilt everything really from the ground up.
Somebody really had a vision of what that was going to be, because when I saw all of that, I thought, holy cow, this is going to take forever, which it didn't. It was in fairly short order, because I guess that after they saw it, that they must have gotten together with a good architect, obviously, to put this thing together, because the current place is a phenomenal space there as well, with the little library and everything.
Yeah, they hired a very, very prestigious architecture firm in Chicago that had designed other very notable theaters, including the Looking Glass. So they really got top guys working on that. Yeah.
Which there again, they have a close-up room, which is behind. Now I assume that they have integrated that so they're not going to be conflicting. There is nothing going on the stage at the same time the close-up is going on there now. So you can do one or the other or both.
That's right. So you would pay your ticket to see the main show, and there's different tiers of tickets. For if you sit in the very front row or in the balcony, where that's the VIP seats. And the front row and the balcony get tickets to see the close-up show after the stage show. And then the remainder of the seats for the close-up show are up for grabs for sale to the people on the main floor.
As an aside, I thought this was a learning experience for me, because it was one of the first bars that I had gone into and ordered a martini and got it served basically in a stemless glass.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Well, they decided to go stemless because the people it's I guess easier to knock them over if you have a stem on it. So it's kind of close quarters in there. A lot of people moving around, magicians going table to table. So they just wanted to go stemless. Yeah,
and so that's not just martinis, but obviously wine glasses and everything too, which makes perfect sense. I really hadn't thought about that. They probably break a lot fewer glasses that way if they're stemless. Now, close-up magic in Chicago, there is Chicago-style close-up, which traditionally means that you're coming up and sitting at a table. It goes back, I guess, to Schulien's and all the other places from way back.
Yeah.
And they kind of continue that a little bit, didn't they?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, when at the first place, at the Uptown Underground Theater, we would sometimes sit with them if there was enough space available. It was pretty tight quarters in there. The chairs were all set up in a very specific way. We weren't supposed to move them around very much, but if we could sit down with the spectators, it usually helped to increase the intimacy of the performance. Like this, I'm doing these tricks just for you 3 people. This is just for you, so let's all really dig in and enjoy it.
Right.
But then again, sometimes it was just due to the physical outlay of the room, it wasn't possible. So we would try to do it the best we could.
And I know that, speaking of Schulien's, that Bob Schulien was one of the people who was working there too, who had passed just this last year also. That comes from
Yeah, he was the grandson of Matt Schulien, who was the guy who started doing magic in the bar and in the restaurant. So I do have my copy of Magic of Matt Schulien here.
Me too.
Yeah.
Now, are there any other magic bars or anything? I know there's nothing quite like the Chicago Magic Lounge, but is there anything that's still kind of like the ones that they used to have around? New York Lounge and all that?
No, not quite. Shulian's was bought by a new restaurant group in 1999, and they sort of reopened as O'Donovan's. And they still have magic there, so you can still go see magic on the weekends with Al James and his cohorts. So magic at Shulian's still exists, just not called Shulian's anymore.
And where's that located? That
is at 2100 West Irving Park in Chicago. I worked there. I was one of the resident magicians who I'm a part of the rotation, if you will.
Yeah.
For several years after I moved to Chicago. And then I left doing that when the Magic Lounge started to take off. That took up most of my time. So, but yeah, it's still there. I'll drop in for a prime rib on a Sunday night from time to time.
Right. Well, again, Chicago has such a rich history of magic, and it's continuing then on now. And I know that, of course, Magic Inc. had moved from one location a few years ago to a new location as well.
Mm-hmm.
And they've
technically, I'm still on the payroll at Magic Inc.
Are you really?
I think I did. Story about me, because it's all about me in this episode.
Of course.
When I moved to Chicago in 2007 to work at Fun Incorporated, Magic, America's largest magic manufacturer, and so
from where?
I moved from Michigan.
Michigan.
I was originally from Plymouth, Michigan, which is suburban Detroit. I earned my degrees from Michigan State University, and that's when I started to do magic. Really, when I was at school at Michigan State, and that's when I started participating in the Abbott's get-togethers and the Abbott's close-up, and that's how I knew about Fun Incorporated, was through Gabe Fahuri, also a Michigan.
And Gabe, by the way, is one who runs Potter & Potter auctions.
That's right, yeah. Gabe also originally from Michigan, and it was through him that I learned about Fun Incorporated, and I applied for a job that I wasn't really sure what the job was. They had a very vague sort of job description on their website, but I had just graduated from MSU. I didn't really have anything solid yet, and I was just spraying resumes across America.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, well, I'll probably never really get this job, but lo and behold, I did. Graham Putnam hired me in 2007, so I moved to Chicago in fall of 2007. And working at Fun Incorporated, I developed then a relationship with nearly every brick and mortar and online magic shop in America. And so Magic Inc., being one of our closest customers in proximity, Midwest Magic, Mr. Ash, and PJ's and Magic Inc. were the four closest proximity shops to us. And Magic Inc. was often on my way home, so they could call, place an order, and I could drop off their order same day on my way home, and just chew the fat with Pedro and Sandy and whoever was there at the time. And I would often say to them, hey, you ever need somebody to pick up a shift behind the counter, you're low on staff, just let me know. And so one or two times that they did. And so technically, I think I'm still on the payroll there, even though I haven't worked a shift in 9 to 10 years at this point. So,
well, I remember many years ago when you were at Fun Inc. and that I was working at a trade show, and I had contacted you about putting together some 3-card money, because I remember that Fun Inc. was some of their bread and butter. I mean, you guys used to print tens of thousands of those things.
Yeah, that was my department, was the custom magic department. And so we would do screen printing of corporate logos onto playing cards for the 3-card Monty tricks. So lots and lots of those. And so, getting to know people like you and Danny Orleans and Seth Kramer and Ken Newman are some of my biggest customers. And so I got to know all of you.
That's pretty cool. I think that's kind of goes back to I may have met you before then. I wasn't I think I actually met you.
We may have met in Colon.
I was going to say it.
Yeah, I've been going to Abbott's since 2003, or maybe 2005. I'm not really sure. I think it's 2005, but I've been going there since then. I haven't missed one since. one year I left a day early to do a magic show in Chicago. It was the worst gig of my life. And so I took that as a sign that you always block out the dates for Abbott's, otherwise you'll be cursed.
Okay, you have to do that. Yeah, obviously you don't want to cancel colon. You do want to make sure that you have your calendar set so this way that you do attend each year and don't cancel that. Now, one of the things I know that they have, which I think is fantastic. First of all, I can't explain this convention if you haven't been there, other than it being. Most conventions consider themselves to be family-oriented and everybody knows each other, but this really is something in which the whole town comes out, basically. And you can go back and listen to several podcasts in which I've talked with people about this, about the town of Colon and about the convention itself, and plus some daily updates when I've been there. But
I think in your archives, Scotty, you've got me doing field reporting from Colon one year.
Actually, yes, I did.
Yeah, I do recall that, yes.
And I just recently talked with a couple of gentlemen who are shop owners there in Colon, talking about everything that's going on over there then too. But what I was going to say is that I know that one of the things they have is a unique cemetery and a tour that Al Leone gives every year. And
yes.
I think I'm going to buy a couple of plots there for my wife and myself. Do you own a place there yet? Are you thinking about it?
I don't yet, but I got to tell you, I've been thinking about it.
Yeah. Well, this is the year. I think I'm going to definitely do that. I got to get some headstones I'm going to put up there and everything.
One for me, being a Michigander, it would be nice to be laid to rest in Michigan, and then I can't think of a better place than being among friends in Colon. So
yeah, that's kind of what I think then as well. And something else then is unique that you kind of started, I think, was the street performing. I know they have like street fairs and things, but
yeah,
talk a little bit about that.
Okay, so I'm hesitant to claim all the credit for this.
Okay.
But I think I kind of restarted the modern incarnation of it. So in 2006, I was spending the summer. It was my first summer after graduation from Michigan State, and I had been recommended by Hank Morehouse to work at this outdoor shopping mall in northern Michigan. And what they had in mind was for me to busk short shows. I did 20-minute shows 6 times a day in different spots of the property, 7 days a week. And they paid me a stipend.
Yeah.
It wasn't very much. And then they paid for my lodging. I stayed in the Red Roof Inn all summer. And also, one night I went to bed in the Red Roof Inn, and they changed the name of the hotel overnight. So it's like, we're not the Red Roof Inn anymore. We're the Econo Lodge. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I guess I live at the Econo Lodge now. Anyway. So Hank Morehouse recommended.
At least they didn't change the lock on you, so when you came back,
yeah,
you were able to get in the room.
Exactly. So I did 6 shows a day, 7 days a week for 3.5 months. They let me out for a couple days to go work this summer camp that I'd been working for a week, not magic related. And then it wasn't in my contract, but I asked them if I could have a couple of days to go to Abbott's, and they said yes. So I went down to Abbott's, and I remember very specifically this year, Chris Capehart was one of the speakers, was one of the lecturers. And I didn't know who he was at the time. I had never met him. And so I just thought I would just go out and do some busking at night. It's about 8, 9 o'clock at night, or actually probably more like 10 o'clock at night after the evening show had let out at the high school auditorium, and just to see if I could, come up with a couple of bucks and, pay for gas and stuff. And so I did that a couple of the nights, and one of the nights one of the days Chris Capehart had given his lecture about street performing and busking. So I took a lot of good notes on that, and I plan to implement them as soon as I got back up to Mackinac City the next day. And so that Saturday night, I started doing my busking show, and first guy in my crowd was Chris Capehart. And I suddenly felt all nervous. Oh, God, he's going to be judging me. He's going to have like a whole list of, you didn't do this, you got to change this. But he was not like, he was super nice. He was very encouraging. He took me aside and he said, I love what you do. Do two things for me. He said, sign up for Gig Masters, which was a new thing at the time. Yeah. I had never heard of it. And the second thing he said was send a video into the castle. So I did that too. Never heard back. Not better. But Chris Capehart became a really close friend. And I really appreciate him taking the time to give some advice to just a kid just trying to do some magic. So,
but then you kind of formed this contest, didn't you?
Well, no, I didn't have anything to do with forming the contest. But what I think what happened was people realized, or the organizers in Colon had the powers that be of Colon, Michigan, recognized that the street performing thing was rather popular because it was sort of free and unticketed. That means the locals who weren't at the show could still see some magic and experience magic in the magic capital of the world. So the following year, they created a busking contest. And it was a difficult thing to organize. I realized that, because how do you really judge and how do you figure out who wins? So then that was, I guess that would have been 2007. And then 2008, they changed it into just, instead of a contest, just sort of free busking shows for the public, sponsored by the Colon Chamber of Commerce. And they sort of asked me to be the organizer of it. So I asked a couple of people who I knew were going to be in Colon and who could do outdoor street performing, and set up like 1 hour shifts at different places on different days. And now, we've been doing that now for a good 10, 11 years.
Well, now that you were funded by the downtown organization, were you able to still get tips and use your hat?
Yes, absolutely. I should point out that the sponsor, we do pay the magicians a fee per shift that they perform, plus tips. The fee that we give them is not very much. Okay, it's not, nobody's making a killing here.
It's kind of like a waiter, I guess. You make your money on tips. Yeah,
it's just a little nice thing to have, and then the rest is on tips. And let me emphasize too that in the village of Colon, there's no real regulations about street performing, so other people can street perform too, and I absolutely encourage it. Mm-hmm. You don't have to be just because we're sponsored, and that what that means is that also the times and locations are published in the newspaper, so people can know exactly when to expect a performance.
But if somebody like myself or whomever is not part of this and just shows up and starts, I'm not going to be paid by the city, but just those people who are designated, I guess, that you work with, that they get paid plus their tips.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
If you were attending Abbott's and you decided, hey, maybe I want to buy this expensive thing it's on the showroom, let's see if I can busk it and try to earn a little money, absolutely go ahead and do that. You don't need my permission or my sponsorship or anything. Well, the only thing I would say is just don't do it at the same time and location as when we have one of our sponsored people.
Right, good point. That goes back, I guess, to basically what I always thought Abbott's is just kind of not really a free-for-all, but it was just a convention of people convening, magicians convening. When I first went, my first time, I actually bought a dollhouse illusion out of the back of someone's car. They had it in their trunk. They opened it up and they had that thing, set it up, and I had my buddy Rick Walker actually drive it back because he had gone up there to perform the show there that weekend. But anyhow, I know that a lot of other people who will just be selling things outside of the dealer's room, and they're just set up all around town, which is part of the beauty, I think, of this, in which that the whole town just kind of shows up. Plus, even people who are not magicians, they were having garage sales with their just crap, tries to sell things too,
They're well-loved ephemera, I think you mean.
There you go. Nice, yeah. And so as far as the evening shows go, that you kind of took the place then of, they always had live music, and I think that's another wonderful thing that is unique about the Abbott's Get-Together, unlike other shows that would have recorded music, and they always had, is it Thelma Wrench?
Wilma Wrench.
Wilma Wrench, yes.
Wilma Wrench.
Who had played the organ there for a number of years, and so then you took her place, so...
Yeah, she played the organ for a long, long time, and then she decided to retire, and that's fine. She certainly earned it. I certainly missed the sound of the organ, because it really it was so unique to Abbott's, and without it, I really missed it, and I know a lot of other people did too. And Wilma had made a CD, and they played the CD, which was nice, but it just wasn't the same as having her there. Yeah, so I decided, well, nobody else is going to do this, so I guess I'm going to have to. So around the time she had stopped, I was interested in taking up jazz organ on the Hammond organ. And so it's not the same kind of organ, it's not the same kind of style of playing that she did. So it's a little different. But it's still organ music, it's still live music. It's as far as I know, it's still the only convention that has a live musician, and I was able to take a lot of the skills from performing in Chicago. One of the things, I'm so multifaceted, Scotty. We didn't even talk about playing the piano for improv shows in Chicago, but I took a lot of the skills from that and apply it to performing magic. So I've been doing that now for, I think, 3 or 4 years.
Well, I was going to lead into that, but I was going to say, just give us a few chords of what that you normally would play there.
So I've got my own jazz trio, and we would play, just some basic blues stuff like. So some stuff like that, but I'll play some jazz standards, try to play them upbeat, pump up the energy in the room. I think I did some live streams on my Facebook of past performances of Abbott's, but the one tradition I did make sure I maintained was playing "There's No Business Like Show Business" as we lead into the show. That was always the big showstopper every night, and that's the one that gives people chills and has their hair stand up when they know the show's about to start. When
they know that's it, because they hear that, particularly those who come every year, that. Exactly.
I know. I still remember hearing, seeing Wilma play that song and having a big smile on my face because, oh boy, it's starting. Here we go. So I hope I get to convey that same feeling to people.
Well, then as you continued, I was going to say, in playing that, I know that you have been doing a lot of things for improv shops and everything like that then, too.
Yeah.
So are you, like, for these comedy shops, are they kind of in between, or how is that you were? Is it just you, or do you have your trio at these?
No, it's for the comedy shows. It's usually just me playing the piano, and so I work for the I.O. Theater, which has had a lot of famous alumni like Tina Fey and Tim Meadows, and A.D. Bryant, who's on SNL right now, Chris Redd, and Alex Moffat, he's on SNL right now too. So I would work for them, and I'd also work for another place called Comedy Sports, which has been in business a long time. They're the ones that I've been working with the longest, since about 2010. And that's if you've ever seen that TV show, Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Oh, sure, I love that.
Yeah, it's a lot like that, where it's short form games, points are awarded to the teams. And then on Whose Line they bring in Laura Hall to play the piano. That's what I do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm familiar with that. For those who aren't, I'm sure they've got that on YouTube as well. Highly recommend that as a great show. It's not on the network, but you can find it. And it's
on the CW right now.
Is it on CW? Okay.
Yeah.
So that's way again, that they would have to make up some music or some lyrics, and they would be having somebody play in the background. So yeah, I know what you're talking about. With that. And from there, we started at the beginning about you being involved with the Society of American Magicians, and I know that you've really been instrumental in keeping the local assembly going and bringing in some lectures and coordinating meetings and everything. What assembly number is that?
Number 3.
Number 3.
We just celebrated our centennial, 100 years of Assembly 3 last August.
Mm-hmm.
We still have our original charter document from when we were made an official assembly in 1919, and it was signed by then National President Harry Houdini.
We had one of those also.
Yeah, it's very special.
We are number 19, and that was hanging in a hotel called the Shamrock Hotel here in Houston. That when it was demolished, that it went with the rest of the stuff.
Oh no!
Yeah, no one knows where it is or what happened to it. So. But so I know New York was number 1, and you're number 3. Yep. What was number 2? Do you know?
I believe it was San Francisco.
That makes sense.
Number 4, Philadelphia. Number 5, Detroit, now defunct. So that's I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
And so you're up now for second vice president.
That's right. So the last I'll give a quick summation of my history in the SAM. So when I moved to Chicago, I didn't really know anybody else in town, so I would get involved in the all the local magic clubs, the SAM, the IBM, and the independent ones, the Wizards Club. I served as president for a year for them. Conjurer's Corner is another one. And so I realized I also wanted to make friends who weren't magicians, so that's when I started doing improv classes at the Second City, and that's kind of how I got involved in the improv scene. But for a lot of times, those clubs would ask me to teach, and I felt like I didn't really have any place teaching. I didn't really have anything to say. I didn't think I had really the life experience to do that. I did a couple lectures, but I didn't really feel like I had something to say. And so for a while then, I separated myself from a lot of these organizations. I had been involved in the IBM and my local Ring 54 in Lansing, Michigan, before I moved to Chicago. And it wasn't about till 2014 or 2013, 2014 or so when I decided I felt like I did have something to say now, something to teach. So I took a look around at the landscape, and I had because I had so many options. We have IBM, we have SAM, a couple of SAMs. I decided I wanted to put my focus and energy into one of these. And I looked at the SAM, which was it was struggling, I think, at the point. The man who'd been the president, he had been the president for a very long time, and I knew he was just sort of tired and fatigued. And so I decided to step up and relieve him. And Neil was grateful. Love Neil, but he was just tired. He had been doing it too long.
Sure.
And so I decided to step in.
Yep,
needs some new blood. So I decided to step in and put some energy into it. And we sort of raised our activity from about 12 members to 50 members.
Wow. In
3 years. And that was me working really hard and getting people to come out. And at the time, our location was part of the difficulty. We were located in Oak Park, which is a western suburb. And so it was difficult for people who were city dwellers to get all the way out there. And I knew that we had to move our assembly into Chicago so that people who lived in the city could attend. And once the new Magic Lounge opened, I wanted us to be able to meet there. And so we have. And that's been a big help in our attendance and activity. But also, after about 3 years of as president, I knew I didn't want to get burnt out. So I decided to step aside. And, I stepped into the role of secretary, which I'll say to you, Scotty, and to every assembly and ring out there, the secretary is one of the most important jobs for your assembly, because they've got to keep the record straight and be sort of that conduit of information, both up and down to the national organization. The secretary is the one that's supposed to communicate to the national office who's a member, who's not, and it's through the secretary that the information gets funneled down. Like, for example, it's election season at the SAM. I just received the ballots in the mail for the national officers. So they came to me, the secretary, and it's my job to take those to the rest of the assembly and announce that we've received these, here's the candidates, and ascertain the votes and send it back on to the election officer. So secretary is a very important job. Mm-hmm. And I've been serving in that role in my assembly now for the last 3 years or so. And in addition to serving as the Midwest Regional Vice President for the Midwest region, which is 9 states, I'm going to try to do it right now. It's Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Iowa, North and South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas. I think that's everybody.
I was going to ask, by the way, back up just a second, are there any suggestions that you could give to clubs in general, whether they're IBM or independent organizations or whatever, local clubs, as to what, aside, you mentioned that would increase attendance, aside from location being a major thing, but activities, what do you recommend that people do?
Well, it's going to depend, I think, and you're going to want to be able to take a poll or do some reasonable intelligence on it, on what your members are looking for. In Chicago, we had a lot of members who were advanced, part-time professionals and professionals. And so I tried to think of some programs that would be of use to them. So we did some programs recently that were we did a program just on advice from the pros, like about sound systems, about emergency magic kits to keep in your car.
Right.
That didn't even include magic, just like stuff like
magic markers.
Magic markers, a deck of cards, breath spray, Clorox pen.
Right.
If you get a stain on your shirt.
Right. Good idea.
Yeah, stuff like that that we would carry from time to time.
So going back again then to being second vice president, then there'd be first vice president and then president. Is that kind of the steps?
Then president elect.
Elect, okay.
And then national president.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Yeah.
Well, good luck. I hope that continues to work as you progress.
Yeah.
Those chairs and everything then too.
Yeah. I'll say too, I think it was about 2012 I attended the Magic Summit. I think you might have been there too, Scotty.
It Vegas.
Was in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
In Vegas. Yeah, exactly. And that was the first time I had been to, and I think it was the first one there really had been a leadership summit for clubs and organizations. So that was really cool to be a part of that. Mm-hmm. And I would say if you feel like your club or assembly is maybe not going the way that you'd like it to go, it's okay. You can step up and be involved. We can all work together to make your community and your club a strong and healthy one.
That's great. Well, as we start to close, of course, I know you've been involved in the podcast before and that you have spoken before. So, again, I would encourage you to go back and take a look. Just do a search on the website at themagicwordpodcast.com for John Sturk, and you can hear other chats that we've had then together. A lot shorter than what this is, but I thought that certainly I want to take some time because
many ramblings and diatribes and promos from me.
So what is your magic word? What's your philosophy of life?
Well, in these times, I think my philosophy is going to have to be community. Even though we're trying to stay socially distant, that doesn't mean we need to be emotionally distant. It's important for us to make use and check in on each other. That's part of the reason I've been tuning into a lot of people's live streams. And participating virtually in a lot of different ways that I can. And I hope we can stay together, stay positive, stay healthy. And when the whole thing blows over and we get back to at least some sort of normalcy, it'll be that much richer for it.
And we will know each other better because we're spending more time with each other than we were before. Because I think socially before that we were just maybe sending texts or whatever, but now we're spending some more quality time like we are right now across using Skype.
Yeah.
And things like this, I think, in which that you do draw closer. So that's a good point about community, and that hopefully we will draw closer after this has passed and we've gone through. Well, thank you, John. I appreciate your time.
Well, my pleasure, Scotty. Thank you so much for asking me.
And thanks for all that you do for the organization and for magic in general. And so I look forward to seeing you in Cullen at the Abbott's Get-Together. I'm going to be going there instead of Magic Live this year. So
I will be there.
Yeah, you don't want to cancel because of bad luck. So for the Magic Word Podcast, that was John Sturk. This is Scotty out. Oh, that was just grand. Thank you very much, John. That was just a lovely chat. I appreciate the time we had to share and talk about so many variety of subjects. Gosh, this was really great. And I think we kind of hit on so many different notes. I'm sure that those people who are listening, perhaps who may not have known you as well, now they know you and have a new friend in John Sturk. So thank you, John, for sharing your thoughts, and also each week on your Facebook page where you're doing the Sturking Hour. So congratulations on that. Well, at the beginning of this program, we had mentioned that we're going to announce the winners of this week's contest. That is the Stranger app, which is offered both in the Android and the iPhone operating systems. And this was developed by Jonathan Levitt, and again, just recently released with the Android version. And so now is the time I think we should announce the winners who are going to be getting a free app. And their names are Edward Taylor will be receiving the iPhone app, and Gary Weimer will receive the Android. Congratulations, Edward and Gary. I know that you're going to enjoy those apps. The Stranger is just a wonderful performance piece that you can do close-up, walk-around stage for a group of 1 to 1,000. It's just an amazing thing. I highly recommend that. And I want to thank each and every one of you for entering the contest. And for those of you who didn't, you're going to miss out on something also kind of special. Those who did enter, be watching your email, because Jonathan's going to send you something that will be a special offer, something that I think that you might enjoy and might want to check out. And that also perhaps might add as a little bit of an incentive, so when we have future contests that you might consider entering the contest, because you never know what you might receive as a follow-up. Even though that you may not have your name selected as being the ultimate winner, everybody who does participate and who enters is a winner. So thank you guys very much for entering the contest, and thank you listeners each week for coming back and to listening to the Magic Word Podcast. You know, you could help us out a little bit if you would just go to whatever platform that you listen, whether it's on Stitcher, Spotify, on Google Play, iTunes, whatever it is, and giving us a 5-star rating, giving us a review of what you think of the podcast. We certainly would be able to grow a little bit more and reach more listeners if we get a little bit higher ratings, and those ratings will come because of your participation and letting the world know. So just help share the word, share the magic word, and let everybody else know. And if you'll just take 2 minutes of your time to go and do that, that'd be a great way then of helping. One last thing that I want to leave you with, and that is this is week number 3 of our Magician's Relief Project. And I certainly want to thank Betty and Jean Protis for being the ones who kind of got this whole thing started with their generous donation. And we have more money that has been donated then as well. So now we're up to $73 per week that we are giving to a magic dealer, and they use that then as credit towards another magician who could use some relief. So if you are a magician who could use some relief during these difficult times, or that you know someone who might be in a little bit of need, please remember this is not charity. This is just magicians helping magicians. And go to this week's podcast, and there'll be a form there at the bottom where that you can help somebody by just putting in their name, or you can be the one receiving the help. And if you are someone who would like to assist financially and you have the means, we're going to be doing this for another 7 weeks. So please contact me. That's Scott at themagicwordpodcast.com. I'll send you back an email as to how you can make your financial donation towards this project. It's been very helpful, and those who are in need, and so they could really use your help. So please consider that. So, until next week, stay well, get booked, and remember to stay together, stay positive, and stay healthy. This is Scotty out.